This is a sample of the information provided as part of the flexible training resources available through HACCP.com. Our training courses are designed to provide training participants with an understanding of food safety and quality system elements and also offer user-friendly assessment activities and competency checklists to complete the training cycle. Internal auditing. Key definitions for internal auditing. Announced internal audit. An announced internal audit is system review activity that is announced to key persons prior to being conducted. Closed question. A closed question can be answered with either a single word or a short phrase. Corrective action. Corrective action is mandatory action to be taken when a deviation to the quality system occurs, particularly in relation to a critical control point. Examples of corrective action could be removal of foods from a broken-down chiller and organizing for the chiller unit to be repaired, or further heat treatment to a product which did not reach the required cooking temperature defined as a critical limit. Corrective action request or CAR. A corrective action request is a non-conformance raised as outcomes of an auditing process. This is basically a notification of an identified system deficiency. A CAR is also commonly known as an NCR or non-conformance request. Open question. An open question is likely to receive a long informative answer. Opportunity for improvement. An opportunity for improvement is an identified food safety and quality system element that should be considered for review and amendment to ensure it is capable of achieving intended outcomes. Unannounced internal audit. An unannounced internal audit is system review activity that is not announced to key persons prior to being conducted. Internal auditing development. When considering the development, documentation and implementation of internal auditing within food safety and quality management systems, the following information should be considered to ensure effective outcomes. About internal auditing. Internal Auditor Code of Conduct. Internal Auditor Availability. Schedule and plan the internal audit. Conduct the internal audit. About internal auditing. Internal audits are scheduled, conducted and recorded to ensure a food business has the stimulus to maintain their food safety and quality programs. Internal audits should be scheduled to include all elements of the food safety and quality systems, and should be conducted by competent internal auditors at a frequency relevant to the risk of the processes and products involved. Outcomes of the internal auditing processes should be communicated to senior management, and should include a formalized corrective action process for any identified non-conformance. The internal auditing processes within leading food businesses are strongly linked to the continuous improvement process. Internal Audit Code of Conduct. Similar code of conduct expectations apply for internal auditors as those that apply for external or regulatory auditors. Basic expectations of internal auditors include ethical obligations including fairness, respect, impartiality, occupational health and safety, discrimination, confidentiality, harassment and falsification of audit outcomes. Behavioral aspects including attitude, communication, avoiding intimidating or offensive behavior, acting professionally and not being judgmental. Standards of dress including suitability and meeting biosecurity requirements where applicable. Handling conflicts of interest. Acceptance of benefits including declaration of gifts or incentives offered and accepted. Appropriate use of internal audit and food business information and audit outcomes. Internal auditor availability. Internal auditors are commonly either employees of the business being audited, or strategically sourced external consultants. It is commonly considered appropriate for a food business to have access to a number of internal auditors up to 10% of the total number of employees within the business operation. The actual percentage of internal auditors available to a business is generally based upon the volume of total employees within the business up to a point where it is not suitable to train internal auditors. For example, in a business with 20 employees, it is realistic to expect that 2 internal auditors are trained, whereas in a business with 1,000 employees, it would not generally be appropriate to train and use 100 internal auditors. The number of internal auditors available to any food businesses should be based upon risk, and should ensure a thorough and effective internal auditing process where such auditors ideally do not audit their own work. It is generally accepted a conflict of interest for an internal auditor to conduct an audit on their own work. This is an important consideration for smaller businesses, where internal resources may not be specifically available to facilitate an internal audit where the food safety and quality system elements are maintained by the internal auditor. Internal auditing steps. As with any other business process, internal audit should be well structured to ensure appropriate and effective outcomes for the food business being audited. The following steps are provided as a guideline for an internal audit in logical sequence. Schedule the internal audit. Plan the internal audit. Opening meeting. Conduct the audit, including review of documents and records and physical applications of the food safety and quality systems. Document internal audit findings, including the final internal audit report or summary. Closing meeting, including the issuing of corrective actions where applicable. Internal audit review. Schedule the internal audit. Scheduling of internal audits is usually facilitated against a predetermined frequency. This frequency is commonly defined within the Food Safety and Quality System Verification Schedule. The frequency of internal audits are usually defined by the risk-based scope and purpose of the food business operation, though it is common for customers or regulatory requirements to define the minimum schedule for all elements of the food safety and quality system elements. It is important to ensure that the nominated frequency for internal audits can realistically identify and correct any systemic deficiencies before they potentially impact upon food safety or quality or regulatory control of product. When defining the exact date and time of the commencement of the internal audit, it is important to ensure that the documented and operational systems being audited are available, so that their development, documentation and implementation can be objectively reviewed as an element of the internal auditing process. Where applicable, agreed schedules, dates and times for internal audits should be agreed in writing by all relevant parties. The notification of the proposed internal audit schedule will usually be defined by the scope and purpose of the internal auditing activity. If the internal audit is an announced internal audit, notification should be provided to relevant parties to ensure general awareness and preparation for the audit. If the internal audit is an unannounced internal audit, no notifications may be required providing all of the food business notification requirements have been met. It is common for senior management to be informed of the intention of unannounced internal audits to be conducted to ensure availability of resources as required. Plan the internal audit. Internal audits are conducted by nominated individuals or an internal audit team, depending on the size, scope and purpose of your food business and the internal audit activity. An audit team is usually made of suitably qualified and experienced internal auditors who take direction from a lead internal auditor. Audit teams provide flexibility to the internal audit system, particularly for audits of complex systemic elements that require a range of technical expertise. Each member of the audit team must have the skills, knowledge and experience required to audit the specific parts of the food business to which he or she is assigned. Likewise, individual internal auditors are suitably skilled and competent regarding the internal auditing process. When considering employees for conducting internal audits, considerations should be given to those that have strength in investigating issues and that are good communicators. Higher skilled and more suitable employees will provide more effective and efficient internal auditing outcomes for your food business. The most important element of establishing an internal auditing team is to clearly define the internal audit team leader, and to delegate the role, responsibility and authority of such within the context of the proposed internal auditing activity. Internal auditors, whether as individuals or as part of an internal audit team, should consider the following elements of the internal auditing planning step. Develop a structured internal audit plan with defined roles for all internal auditors or internal audit team members. Define resources required to ensure the audit is conducted in an effective and appropriate manner. Resources may include checklist and report formats and copies of then standards to which the internal audit will be conducted. Define the scope of the internal audit. Does the internal audit cover the entire food safety and quality system or a specific section or element? Define the purpose of the internal audit. Is the internal audit being conducted to ensure compliance with regulatory, customer, industry or internal food safety and quality standards, or any combination of such? Develop strategic questions to ask the auditees to confirm compliance and identify non-conformance issues or opportunities for improvements. Internal audits create a fantastic opportunity for any food business to improve the skill and knowledge of key employees. The internal audit process can be an invaluable training and development resource for introducing less skilled or experienced or prospective future internal auditors to its requirements. This not only provides the opportunity for upskilling of key employees, but also creates an environment in which general and specific food safety and quality awareness can be transmitted across the entire business operation. Opening meeting. The opening meeting is the formal presentation of internal audit scope and purpose, and should ideally be facilitated to include senior management and relevant parties from within the business operation. The purpose of the opening meeting is to ensure awareness of the internal audit activity, and to set the parameters for the application of such. The opening meeting should generally include the following elements: listing of opening meeting attendees, introduction of the internal auditor or internal audit team, definition of the scope and purpose of the internal audit, expectations of the internal auditor or internal audit team, expectations of the food business being audited, clarification of the audit process including outcomes, clarification of requirements for identified non-conformance and related corrective actions, communication requirements regarding the internal audit closing meeting. Key information from the opening meeting should be included within the documented internal audit findings. Conduct the audit. The techniques used for conducting an internal audit are similar to those employed by external auditors. The following points should be considered by internal auditors to ensure the most effective outcomes when conducting an internal audit. Clearly explain the scope and purpose of the internal audit to the auditees. The internal auditor should make auditees comfortable during interviews. Body language and other non-verbal clues should be used to gather information as elements of the internal auditing process. The internal auditor should take time to critically listen to the answers provided by auditees, record important information from the answers provided whilst preparing the next question. Provide construction and informative feedback to auditees regarding compliance and non-conformance. Be flexible. If you discover a potential non-conformance or issue not covered by the scope of the internal audit being conducted, discuss it with the auditees. Did you know that HACCP.com includes resources that allow you to create, manage and implement GFSI and HACCP-based food safety and quality programs? Improve your food safety and quality skills and knowledge? Train and develop your team to create better food safety and quality outcomes? Find suppliers and service providers to partner with your business? The information and training resources available through HACCP.com included a variety of formats, such as website content, MP4, MP4 and text, MP3, PDF and slideshow. Are you ready to take the next step in your food compliance journey? Visit HACCP.com today to create your profile and access the full versions of our food safety and quality information packages and much more.